Mike from Just Watch, back with another Just Watch review. Doing a kind of interesting one today in that we are doing a by request video in that everybody wanted to see a comparison video between the Seiko SARB035 and the Rolex Oyster Perpetual. And I know all of you Rolex people out there are going, out of your freaking mind, Mike. There is no comparison between these two watches. But I think there is, and I think there's some things that you can kind of look at as far as similarities go. And I know stainless steel 38 to 39 millimeter, it probably ends there. And I think you need to watch to find out. But there are definitely some things that you can compare between the two watches. And I just wanted to go over them because I know there is some curiosity there and some interest there. So let's switch views here and dive into it. All right, thanks. All right, everybody, so let's take a quick look at these two watches, and I'll go through these as quick as possible. You can go through my channel if you want more information on either of these watches, as I do have full reviews up for both watches. Just check through my history and you will see them. As I mentioned in the outset, this is a kind of a review by request, and that a lot of people wanted to see the difference between these two watches and how they compare, and if they do compare at all. So before anybody goes too crazy, I'm not by any means comparing these two watches or saying that they are in any way equal. They are vastly different watches and vastly different price points. The Rolex cost more than 10 times, actually like 12 times as much as the Seiko SARB. So let's keep that in mind as we go through the watches. I just kind of wanted to show some similarities, how they're similar, because I think there are a lot of people who will never pay $4,000 or $5,000 for a Rolex, but will probably think about it for the SARB and can get a watch that's just great looking on the wrist and wears very well and keeps great time. So let's take a quick look. And actually, before they do that, I realized that I neglected to do the wrist check in the intro. So here is your wrist check for today. We are wearing the Tudor reference number 79230N Black Bay Black. This is the traditional 41 millimeter size from Tudor. This is not the new Black Bay 58, which is a 39 millimeter. I really like this. I've heard a lot of people complaining about the thickness of the case, but I don't really find that to be an issue at all. It's really not much thicker, or it's right around the same thickness as the Seiko Sumo that I've also been wearing around quite a bit too. So really nice piece. We'll get into this, a review on this after I get some more wrist time with it, but definitely liking it right now. Okay, so let's take a look at these two watches and how they compare. So first of all, movements go. Your Seiko SARB has a 6R15 movement. It is a 23 joule automatic movement, vibrates along at 21,600 vibrations per hour. It leaves the factory with, I think it's a plus 20, minus 40, let's just call it 30 seconds, plus minus 30 second range. This one is running at right around 3 seconds a day fast. I've owned a bunch of 6R15 movements. The worst one I've ever had was 8 seconds slow. Most of them run plus minus 5 seconds in my experience. So pretty good. I'm sure that you could bring it to your local watchmaker and get that dialed in even better. So a very good movement for the cost. It's a very durable movement, and I'll show you what this movement looks like in a second as we go through the watch. Your Rolex Oyster Perpetual 39 has Rolex caliber 3132 movement. It is a 28,800 vibrations per hour, so it's a higher beat movement. As you can see, the difference in the second hands as they're sweeping around. It's definitely a little bit more smooth on the Rolex than it is on the Oyster Perpetual than it is on the Seiko SARB due to that higher vibrations per hour. It is a 31 joule movement, so 8 more joules than what you have in the Seiko, and it has a 48-hour power reserve. The 3132 at least is based on the 3130, which has the date. This one has no date, 3-hand movement. This is a plus minus 2 seconds per day tested by the Swiss Chronometer Institute. Rolex takes that one step further by building the watch, casing the movement, testing it again to ensure that it is still within that plus minus 2 seconds a day range. And they will not ship the watch until it is. So as far as that is where the superlative chronometer officially certified nomenclature comes from. It applies, or it is in reference to that plus minus 2 seconds a day from the Swiss Chronometer Institute. And that is a huge difference between the two watches. As far as overall aesthetic goes, you can see they're pretty similar from above. You know, you have your round case style. Your handset is quite different. Your Seiko has that Dauphine style hands with a very, very fine needle style second hand, where you have your classic Datejust style stick style markers with a little bit more meat to it, second hand baton style. Your dials between the two, you have your cream colored, it is a gorgeous cream color on the Seiko. Let me put this Rolex down for a second. With a really nice minute tracks going around there. So there's your nice look at the movement. You have your indices are polished and beveled stainless steel applied with Seiko LumaBrite on the inside of each. So you can see it towards the handset. You can really see it well on that 12 o'clock marker. Of course, your 3 o'clock date window with the white date just kind of gives it a little bit of contrast, makes it really stand out nicely. Applied Seiko at 12 o'clock in stainless steel with your script automatic 23 jewel. And let's zoom in a little bit, excuse me. I've had this little bit of a cold for weeks now that just refuses to leave, and every now and then I get talking and I start coughing, so please excuse the little bit of raspiness in my voice still. That's part of why I've had a delay in making videos lately. It's just when you can't talk, it's hard to make videos. So there is your look at the dial. As far as the dial on the Rolex goes, you have your sunburst dark rhodium dial. Your reflector ring is marked with your Rolex going all the way around. Your minute markers have your blue color splash at each marker. Should be noted, one big difference on this watch between this and the Seiko is your handset, complete handset, and all index markers are made of gold, as is the Rolex 5-point coronet at the 12 o'clock. And you have your Rolex. This is not your new Chromolite. This is the older style Rolex, which glows green. So you have your 3, 6, and 9 lume, and also on your hour and minute hands. The watch is signed with Rolex Oyster Perpetual at 12 o'clock, and then at the 6 o'clock you have your superlative chronometer officially certified nomenclature, and then of course your Swiss made down below. Your case manufacturer is quite a bit of a difference between these two watches, and I think this is one of the places where you really kind of get into the difference. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate about the Seiko is that they didn't really make a Datejust or Oyster Perpetual homage with this watch. And let me show you one of the big differences right off the bat is, see the curvature on the lug, and also the way that you have your reverse bezel, or your reverse bevel on the bezel, easy for me to say, as it leaves the watch case and then slopes back the other way to the crystal. That is very much Seiko, Grand Seiko to me, as far as the curvature and everything else goes, where your Rolex, what you're getting there, you're getting a very flat, traditional Rolex Oyster case profile, and then you're not really getting any of that reverse bevel. It just slopes directly to the stepped up sapphire crystal. So both watches do have a sapphire crystal. The Seiko has AR coating where the Rolex does not, and not making a huge difference under this light, but you can see a difference when you're outdoors sometimes as far as the readability goes. If I wiggle them both this way, I think you can kind of see a little bit of a difference in the AR versus the non-AR. And now let's take a look at the two cases. So your Seiko case has this wonderful step machined into the lug that delineates the brushed finish and the polished finish on the case side. Non-screw down crown signed with the Seiko S, so you can actually wind the watch in this position. So that beveled edge runs for the full length. As I said, it delineates the brushed finish from the polished case side, polished back, and of course you have your open window back where you can see that movement, which is really nice. It's a nicely finished movement, that 6R15 movement, a little bit of signing on the back. I think, see if we can focus. And if we turn crown down, you can actually see some of the movement running. Yeah, there you go. So you can see the movement running there, underneath that nice ruby there. And then solid end link bracelet. What Seiko does with this solid end link, as you can see, they make that little bit of a step up to the bezel, so it's kind of a two-step. So you have from the end link, I can get in focus there, there we go. So from the end link to the bezel, and then up to the bezel to the crystal. It's kind of a nice, it nicely matches this machine steps that they built into the lug too. And really nice finishing. This is Seiko's SARB035 finishing here, so very nicely finished and polished. You can see your bracelet here goes from a 20 millimeter at the lug down to an 18 millimeter at the clasp. And you can see that the rounded profile on that clasp, and this is a pin and collar style bracelet for adjustment, so you have a pin and a collar that you need to deal with. Very simple clasp mechanism. You have your post that the clasp comes down on top of. Twin trigger deployment, the Seiko signing, so it's a very secure. One thing I do not like on this Seiko bracelet is that big garage door of an opening at the end. I wish they had thought to close that up a little bit better. That is something that bothers me, but it is a $350 watch, so you can't expect everything. And the other thing that bothers me about the clasp on the Seiko is that you only have 2 positions of micro adjust. So it doesn't give you a lot of range to micro adjust if you're kind of in between sizes. That can be a problem. So very solid as far as the closure goes with that twin trigger deployment, and very nicely machined clasp pieces too. You can see that skeleton style there in the way that that closes down in. Really nicely fits. You can see how nicely that fits in there. Right there. So there's your clasp and your quick look at your Seiko. Your crown here too, it is quick set and hack on the movement, of course. You pull that out to the first position, you can quick set your date, you pull it out to the second position, you can set your time, and you can hand wind in this first position. Now your Rolex, you have your classic oyster case. So what you have here is this beautiful brushed finishing. Let's see if we can get you focused in there. Solid end links, which is something I really appreciate with the Oyster now that they've gone to the solid end link. One of the things with this new generation of solid end link too, is you can see how that extends just a hair from the end of the lug. That gives the watch about 3 millimeters overall more width than it would indicate. So it makes it wear just a hair bigger than that length would indicate, than the size of the case would indicate. You do, of course, have your waterproof twin lock crown, screw down crown, signed with your Rolex crown. You can see how much flatter that profile is. Let me see if I can show you the two of them. So there's your Seiko with a big curve, and then of course your more flat Rolex. And one of the things I really love about Rolex too is the way they put that bevel into the side of the case, and that delineates your brushed finish from the polished case side. And that bevel runs from that very tip, the full length, down to the other tip. And just a quick tip, if you're in the used Rolex market, one quick way to tell how much polishing the watch has accrued over the years is to look at the crispness of that bevel and also the width of the lugs here. What happens is with the used market, if it's a person who has really buffed it down a lot to really clean up the case size, you lose that factory sharpness there on that bevel, and you also lose some of the meat on the lugs. If you look very closely at some photos on the used market, you can see that you actually develop almost a reverse curve there as they polish them down. You actually lose some of the thickness there at the end too. So if you're in the used Rolex market and it's a vintage, Datejust or Sub or what have you, definitely take a look at those case sides. That's one of the things that you can really tell, how much that watch has been polished. And if it's been polished a ton, stay away from it. That's my recommendation, at least. So there we go with the 3-position crown signed by Rolex. So it is screw down, so you can pop it out to here. I don't want to pop it out because I don't want to lose the synchronization between the two watches. Pull out to the first position. Actually, it's only one position here. So you pull it out to the first position, and actually you can hand wind it at that position. You pull it out one more position and you can set your time. There is, of course, no date set. And then for pushing it back in, it's just beautiful, buttery smooth as far as your threading goes, as one would expect. And also the hand winding operation on this is just wonderful to do. And then One of the things I really appreciate about the watch too is that beautiful brushed finish and that gorgeous taper on the individual links. So you're going from a 20 to a 16, so quite a bit more taper than what you have on the Seiko. This is your traditional Rolex. They love this taper and they execute it beautifully. Then of course your clasp, signed Rolex with your steel inox. And of course your all your signing and everything else. So it's a very simple hook clasp system. You can see how beautifully that closes. I don't know why my watch is refusing, or my camera is refusing to focus there, but you can see how beautifully that closes. And then once again, that's not going to open. You can see how much less of a gap you have there too. It's very minimal. And then your opening to open, you have that really nice spring loaded, and that's what lifts it up off of the clasp. So the watch will not accidentally open. If it does, it's going to be a heck of a hit, or you're going to have to somehow, knock that spring loose for that to open. So there's your Rolex clasp, of course, signed with the Rolex crown, and that is embossed down into the crown, or stamped down into the crown, or into the clasp, I should say, as opposed to raised up. And I actually prefer this to the raised crown, as I think it's going to wear a little bit better. And then give you another look at that gorgeous taper on the Rolex Oyster bracelet. And there you have just kind of a quick overview. Oh, and I didn't show you the case back as well too. So your case back on your Rolex, you can see that is your Rolex tool mark there. There's a tool, Rolex tool, for removing that case back. And then they leave that back with just a diagonally brushed finish. They leave that plain on purpose for engraving room, as many Rolexes are gifted and jewelers want to be able to customize that piece, as a gift. And that's something that happens a lot. People really enjoy giving Rolexes as gifts, and heck, who wouldn't want to receive a Rolex as a gift, right? So there's your quick comparison between the two, your SARB035 and your Rolex Oyster Perpetual 39. As I said, they're in completely different stratospheres overall, but they do have kind of a similar feel on the wrist. And let me give you a quick look at the watches on the wrist. So here is your SARB on the wrist. Really nice wrist presence. It definitely sits up a little higher than the Rolex does, which is really interesting as it is narrower, but I think that is due to that curvature on the lug. It just makes it sit up a little bit higher. You can see that gap. That's, like I said, that's one thing that bothers me about this bracelet, but forgivable at this price point. And then your Rolex Oyster Perpetual. So there's your Perpetual. And I really just like the overall aesthetic of this watch, as far as just the relationship of the bracelet to the lugs, and the lugs to the case, and the crown size, and the size of the dial, and just the overall case size. I think Rolex really nailed it on this. And I really like especially the new solid end links on this generation of Rolex. They're vastly superior to what Rolex used to offer on their kind of stamped hollow end links. So there is your Rolex Oyster Perpetual on the wrist. So everybody, thank you for tuning into this episode on these quick comparisons. As I said, I know we're comparing apples and oranges between these two watches, and that they are vastly different creatures, but people did kind of wanted to see, what the difference was as far as just the overall look and size when they're directly compared to each other. So there you go. There is your direct comparison of your SARB035 to your Oyster Perpetual 39. Everyone, once again, thank you for tuning in and for the likes, comments, subscription, etc., etc., etc. I greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you soon with the next.